All right. I'm Luke from the Movie Boards, and I'm joined by Peter Anderson, Donald Cudmore, and Dr. John J.R. Hewson. And they have a play, Alone Together, which is going to be featured at the Midsumma Festival. The Midsumma Festival is a LGBTQ plus arts and culture festival in Melbourne, which runs from the 19th of the 19th of April, not 19th of Melbourne, to the 6th of May. And first things first, thank you very much for taking the time for the interview. Now, before we get to the really important stuff, talking about the show, where might have people have seen your work before, Peter?
Well, we've as a company, as a virtual theater company, have put out a few shows over the past year, starting with an adaptation of Mary Shelley's Frankenstein, a play adaptation of that right when the COVID pandemic, initially started up and theaters closed down, and we wanted to remain busy with doing theater work. So we arranged to produce this play. We got a cast together and conducted a live virtual performance of the play that was aired live back in May, I believe it was.
Mm-hmm.
And then what followed there was a playwriting contest, whereby we offered $1,000 contest monies to the winning playwright, and we got various submissions come in for that, with Maxi Dara's winning play Alone Together, that we submitted to the Midsumma Festival, and that's the play that will be the subject of this evening's discussion, I'm sure. But other than that, I mean, I've done some work with the gentleman here in the past. Don and I recently shared the stage together in Hamilton, Ontario, Canada, for a performance of Hamlet, Shakespeare's Hamlet, and Don played Polonius. I played the Danish Prince, and we had a blast doing that. Before that, I've been involved with community theater over the years, stemming from classic plays to contemporary ones, and John has quite a bit of experience in that regard as well. And Don is on board with the virtual theater stuff, and his realm is in the tech web world. So we kind of all come together with our interests, and here we are moving along on this train.
Yeah, so it's definitely, it's definitely, Luke, something that came out about with the whole COVID thing. I work with marketing companies and do various things, and we literally had one of my clients who had a play full of people ready to go on stage. It was 4:00 in the evening, and they got shut down that night. It was opening night for a national production. The Board of Health came in and said they had to be shut down. So they literally had a national tour, and he called me, and literally, and people were kind of in shock, right? Because people didn't know this was going to happen. And around the same time, Peter and I had a conversation about, he knew that his plans for the summer were going to change. So we thought, we got to do something. So that's what got us started on this.
And Jay, what is some of the shows you've been in?
I've been in some Neil Simon plays. He's a marvelous comedic stage writer that many people will have heard of. And so I've been doing community theater over the 20 years or so since I retired from running and setting up intensive care units and things. And I guess I played everything from villains to village idiots to that's a harsh way to put it, but the full range. And I love acting, and I love the directing as well, because I try to take it one step past what's called method acting, that says, imagine when you had grief, if you have to show grief now. What I try to get the actors to do is to so much be that character that they're not acting at all. They're being that role. So I almost take exception to the word acting, because it implies a falseness, which I try to skirt when I'm directing. So anyway, you will have noticed I've got as much ham in me as a pig. Small brain, large mouth. So I'll stop.
Okay, well, now, Alone Together, what's it all about?
The title, in a way, says it all. COVID has disrupted global social interaction with very major detrimental effects on people. This is not only those who die difficult deaths in intensive care units. This separation is dramatic. And Alone Together is, I think, a brilliant play. The minute I read that script in our contest, to me, that said everything, because I'm very sensitive to social things. And what it's about is this evolution of a group of people going from feeling isolated and alone with all the stresses in their individual lives to managing one taking the lead, one of the characters taking the lead in making that community of lonely people a new community where they were together, hence the title, Alone Together. And I felt it was a sociologically brilliant play, brilliantly written, both humorous and absolutely deeply tragic in the best meaning of the word tragic, and just beautifully written. I am in awe. I'm a playwright as well, and when I see good writing, I assure you I love it. This, I think, is a masterpiece on the part of the playwright, and I believe we have managed to do it justice in its production. There.
So is this the first time? No, that's the second time you've put this production together, right?
Well, actually, Luke, this will be the first time that it's been shown in this form. So
Yes.
Oh, okay.
the entire play was actually one of the things that we did in the parameters for when Peter organized the contest through the Classical Theatre Company. One of the things that the authors did not have a whole lot of time to write it. They literally only had about 4 weeks, and we had 18 submissions come from across North America. And so people were, during COVID, writing about, at that time when we were all stuck. And as a cast members, if you look at the people who are performing in the play, some of the people who are in the play have actually never met in person. We've only met online. And during the course of the contest, we had 18 plays that we went through, and we did a series of table reads. So the actors had lots of chances to act. And it was at a time when everybody was available, because everybody was stuck at home. And so the challenge was, how do you take something like that and make it something that's enjoyable to watch? And that's what we've tried to do. So I think it has an authenticity. It's set in April of 2020. And I think, I would hope that, I don't know, I can't say for Australia, but we have friends in Australia. So I think your instance of the shutdown was pretty similar to ours. I mean, literally, my daughter and I were going to see Hamilton in New York on Broadway on a Wednesday, and our trip got canceled on the Friday night before because Broadway went down because of COVID. And so everybody was sitting around. So that was the context in which the play was written. And so it really, in a sense, takes you back to that time. And like I say, the challenge is how to do it in a way that would be interesting. And we were very fortunate with I think Maxie does. I think it's a terrific play, and Peter in it, I guess, in a sense, is one of the lead characters. We see his progression as somebody who's trying to cope, and in that context, you see John, who is dealing with the sick wife, And then we have another group, which are a couple of students that live together that don't really know each other. And over the course of the play, you watch these three people who all live in the same building. The reason why there's a poster behind us is the idea is these people are close enough that they can even hear each other, but they don't interact. And then over the course of the play, you start seeing the interaction happen out of desperation, really.
Wow. Okay. So, is this the first time you've had a show featured in the Midsumma Festival?
Yes,
Yeah.
it's the first play within this festival. That's right.
I was just sort of with the pandemic and the virtual, well, the emergence of virtual productions, has it how has that made it easier to stage these productions? How obviously, but as actors how has your performances changed as considering that there's no interaction between you and the audience, essentially?
Yeah. Well, I'll maybe say a few words and then pass around to John, because John directed this particular one and also acted in a significant role in Alone Together as well. But it's certainly different. It's the sort of accumulation of energy within yourself and within the room and the premises that you're acting in is a lot different. But it's still connecting with people nonetheless, because even as we're on the screen now, I mean, I can see you, I can, gauge you and perhaps how you're feeling, how you're thinking. So for this, in the context of acting, if we're acting in this format, I can feed off of you and you can feed off of me, just as as we would on a stage, right? Or before a movie camera, or whatever the case may be. But the absence of the audience is is a factor that is certainly one that we have to deal with in the virtual theater world. But it's not unlike producing a movie where you don't have a readily available audience before you. It's in fact better in a lot of ways, especially when we did the live show Frankenstein, because you're live at that moment with an audience out there that you can't see, but they're present in a virtual world. And it's very spontaneous. It's adrenaline pumping in its own right, and in the moment, you're really acting in the moment, just like you would be on the stage. So, and that's the type of experience you don't get with film acting, right? So, there's certainly an advantage to it. I don't know if John, maybe you have some further reflections. What was your experience like within that virtual world that we've been playing around with?
I get the feeling that each of us succeeded in becoming the character, so that in fact it was almost as if this was us as individuals in that role, as contrasted with being an actor doing a role. And to me, that's what leads to a good production. I have read a number of articles by many movie actors over the years, and they make the comment that when they're doing biographical or very intense characters, they're exhausted by the end of the filming. And the reason they're exhausted is because they have had to go through this constructing and becoming another person. Their own life goes on, but they have to take that off and put on the coat of that character and be that person, as contrasted with pretend they are that person. That to me is the essence of drama. And I don't even want to use the word actors, the players. They're not playing other. The person who is that person at the time. And that's where you get to see the subtle, unplannable little flinches in the eye, the crease in the corner, a little twitch at the corner of a mouth. Those are things that we all do automatically with the interplay between emotion, amygdala, brainstem, and all the other parts of the neuroanatomy I won't get into. And the essence of a good production is when the people being that role, and now I like that word being, not acting, they really are being that. And that's where you see genuine response or genuine production. And if you have a script like this one, my final comment, and I promise to stop, you don't even need to pass me an Australian dollar to make me quiet here now. But I don't attend theater, film, or read books to be diverted and simply entertained. Every minute that I spend intellectually on something originally external, like a book, a film, a play, I'm doing that to enable myself to grow. And the only way you can grow is if the book or the production leaves an impression. And it has to leave an impression that you could summarize in 5 to 10 words, or my metaphor for this is like a bumper sticker on a car. If you can't boil it down in your production and in your writing so that the person walks out saying, wow. For example, I mean, in a novel I wrote a while ago, the bumper sticker for that whole 300 pages was, family is not how you're related, it's how you relate. Then when you start to mull that over the next 6 months or a year, it changes your view of the world. And I guess I view that in the arts. I sit on the Arts and Culture Council in Burlington, which is a neighboring city right near Hamilton here. And my message and reason for sitting on that is that the arts make us civil. The arts make us think. The arts enable us to be better people. So I see them as being every bit as important as clean water and reasonably clean air. I wish I could say really clean, but I can't, not these days. But I will now stop preaching, but that's who I am. It's a very moral thing to me. It's about values, it's about behavior, and it's about not wasting your time just being diverted. Hell, I'm going to be dead before I know it for a longer time than I'm alive. So let's not waste my life just giggling. I want to learn. And that, I believe, is what we have done with this play. I think is a phenomenal learning, thinking experience for the audience. So I'm very proud to be associated with this at all levels.
So, and I don't know, Luke, when you're writing these kinds of things, do you get a chance to preview any of the films?
Some films I get send screeners, preview copy. The most recent was for an Israeli film called Golden Voices, which is been screened in limited release in Australia since towards the end of March 25th. But a lot of the other stuff is just sort of movies that just sort of tickled my fancy given day, and or was just something that was sort of a spur of the moment decision at the cinema sort of thing. It's been joked that the usual cinema I go to was another home to me, and my grandmother before she died joked that my DVD collection is sort of a small DVD store. So, and yeah, I definitely, you definitely find answers in movies and books and all that sort of.
Because one of the things that you probably would want to know, Luke, if you haven't seen our film, is that because ours is kind of a mixture between a play and a film in a sense, but one of the things that we had to do was deal with the question of not wanting to send someone to a Zoom meeting. That's not what we wanted people to take away from this. And so one of the things that we had to think about was, how do you reduce the information? How do you reduce how much information people get so that they can pretend that they're either watching a play? Peter and John both come from acting in the theater. That would be their first love. So the idea was, how could we translate that in this medium? And so the way that we ultimately ended up doing it was actually putting a filter over the performances, so that when you're watching it, it actually looks more like a graphic novel. And that was very intentional. We did it. It gives it a very different look than I think you'd probably be used to seeing in any kind of production. It's not fancy technically, but it's just what we were trying to do was make it so that your mind, like if you're going to Hamilton, you know that you're in different places, but you're still in a theater. And that's what we were trying to do here as well, is that when Peter is talking to his to his boyfriend in the show, that's recorded 1,000 miles apart. The other actor is 1,000 miles away. And we had to come up with a way that would actually make you feel like these people are in the same city. They don't have to be in the same room, but they at least have to be in the same city. And so that's one of the things that we tried to do with this, was to give it a certain kind of look. And then therefore, like I say, when you were looking at it, it comes out with a little bit more of a simplified color palette. And the idea is to kind of let you escape a little bit without feeling like you're doing what we're doing right now. Because obviously, if we were to produce a play with the four of us doing exactly what we're doing right now, I think most people's reaction would be, I'm in Zoom meetings for work all day long. Do I really have to see another Zoom meeting?
Yeah.
And so we've tried to address that. So if you ever are interested, if you ever want to skip through the film, I can certainly send you a link and you can see what I mean visually about it, because it is a little bit different than how other people are doing it. But that's how we broach the question of how do you simplify it enough so that people's imaginations can take hold.
So it's so the play Alone Together is stylistically different to what people are seeing with this recording.
Yeah, I mean, that was certainly our hope, but the idea was not to use it as a gimmick. It was really to use it as a way of transporting people to somewhere else.
In a article I was sent about Alone Together, Daria spoke of the fear of, when she was writing the play, of it being too soon. Going into this, was there ever that worry that this was something like was too soon, or was it that it was something that was needed, especially considering that TV and to a certain extent some movies have been coming out over the past year dealing with the pandemic?
I thought it was spot on. And in fact, the history from the time that was submitted to where in Canada we are, at least, we're now in a full stay-at-home lockdown again throughout the whole province of Ontario. We're well into a third wave. This is reproducing the horrors of the flu epidemic from 1918 through 1920. And we're in the middle of a real big mess. And this is no overstatement of the degree of social disruption, medical and psychological damage that is occurring globally. So I think it was spot on. I hear your question. The facts of the thing sadly make this even more relevant now than it was a year ago, not less.
I think there's also, Luke, a certain authenticity from the fact that there were actors participating in the production whose income literally stopped the day that everything shut down. And there are people in the production who live alone. So we're not talking about something abstract. At the time that they were doing this acting, they knew exactly what it was like to be alone I'm not sure what it was like in Australia, but here, people, it wasn't unusual for people to be alone for probably 10 weeks when they literally couldn't go and do the normal things that they would want to do. So we had people in the cast who were suffering from that. And then we had other people, you know, I would be in the other camp. My life didn't change very much. I work in the digital space. The digital space got busier. It didn't get less busy. And so if you were to look at a mixture of people involved in the production, I do think there is something interesting. It's a bit of a time capsule in a way. But I also think that Maxie did quite a good job, because we didn't know a lot about the pandemic in April. Like when she wrote this in April 2020. And so she, in a sense, she was kind of guessing how things were going to go. I mean, in those days, we were still disinfecting ourselves and changing clothes when we got home from the grocery store. So it was a different time because we didn't really know what we were dealing with. And I think she did a really good job of capturing different people's experiences. And it's I think the one thing about what Maxie said is that it might be too soon for some people. Like, I'd like to think this is a play that anybody can see. But I think it's also a play that because of the actors, really, I mean, I think they convey the emotion of it. And when I watch it, it takes me back to feeling exactly how I felt when we were all terrified and didn't know what we were dealing with.
Okay, so it's definitely needed. It's just one of those things that you might not be able to face it right away.
You'd probably prefer to face it with somebody else in the room. If you're under lockdown by yourself right now, you might look at it and say this is a bit too close to home, because you see people who are alone and dealing with being alone. And but that said, I don't know in Australia what the situation was, but in the first wave in Canada, it was the elderly that were the ones that were most affected, and it was the retirement homes where people not only died the most, but where people were the most alone.
Yeah.
And so you know, that whole notion of being alone. And once again, everybody, if you're in a retirement home right now, nobody can go see you.
No. And though I have a friend, my cleaner actually was telling me that a band he's involved in actually had to change things a bit with how they approached some of the gigs. And they ended up doing, he was telling me about how they ended up doing gigs for retirement homes in the actual parking lot for them.
You have to be creative, and there's lots of examples of people doing really cool creative stuff, and this is our attempt. So
okay, all right, just for those of you who well, I'm just gonna have to say wrap things up because I've got another appointment coming soon. But for those of you who want to see Alone Together, the links to the tickets will be in the description for this video. So, you know, and thank you once again for taking the time for this interview. And yeah, thank you very much.
Thank you, Luke. Yeah, we appreciate connecting with you. It was nice meeting.